Hey everybody, welcome back to Rowe Country. It has been a minute and I've been working on this small space in my home to give it a cute makeover, and I got some inspiration from these cute little guys right here. We're taking that bare 4x4 space at the top of my stairs and we're going to give it a cute makeover. So to do that, I made myself some burlap curtains and I'm going to show you how I did that today. I used this roll from Walmart. It was $6.88 and I had plenty left over when I was done. I'm also using some Bondo fabric sticks in my glue gun, some chalk just to sort of mark out where I'm going to make a cut, some scissors to do that cut. Also, I'm going to need a measuring tape and then a damp rag to do some hand pressing of my fabric. I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm also using a craft fabric square from the Dollar Tree. It's 20 by 21. I'm using 3 of these boxwood stems from Walmart, 97 cents each. 1 of these 2-piece wreath forms, 8-inch size from the Dollar Tree. 1 roll of this black and white buffalo check ribbon that I was so excited to find at the Dollar Tree recently. So to get started, I wanted to go ahead and work on my burlap curtains. Now, what I really like about these runners that you can buy at Walmart for $6.88, they are hemmed and stitched, and I'm going to take advantage of that. To find my measurements, I took my measuring strip there, that tape, and I draped it over the curtain rod to see how much of a overhang I wanted, and then just sort of came down the rest of the way, and I arrived at about 40 inches. That is not set in stone, guys, but that was my guide for how these curtains would hang in the space. So I'm just taking a little paper clip to the top of the burlap where it is sewn, and I'm going to come down and measure out. Now I need 48 inches in total. Why? Because my overhang on these curtains are going to be 8 inches. So if I wanted it to come down about 40 inches, to cover my window completely, I need that extra space. Now you see me here marking at 40. This is incorrect, but I did not go back and recreate what I'm doing here. So if you need 40, then you cut at 40. I needed 48, so that's what I did. It's a little deceiving and I'm sorry, but for the purpose of just showing you how easy it is to measure out this burlap and get it cut, there you go. Okay, so there's my measurement. I've cut it off and I need 2 panels for my window space. If you need more, then you cut more. All right, so the way that these runners are done is one end is really tight, the other is not. So this is what I do. I take a damp wash rag. I make sure that I've squeezed out the water, but that it's damp, it's not dripping. And I take it first and blot it over my fabric. Then I lay it as it's folded there, and I put the fabric on top, and I use my hands to press down against that rag. And what that does is it, not just the burlap either, I'm able to do this with my craft fabric. What that does is it helps the fabric forget that it's been folded the way that it was, and it really does take out the creases. If you want to, you can take out an iron and go ahead and do that. But I was feeling, a little bit of a lazy crafting day, and I wanted to see what I could do with that damp rag first, so that's what I did. Now, what I want to do at this point is work on these curtains. And guys, I apologize because the way that my filming space is set up at this point, I don't have the ability to give you a wide angle overshot of what I'm doing. So I'm going to do my best here to show you that I am measuring out so that my overhang on this, and I keep calling it an overhang, it's not a seam, but it's an overhang on this curtain panel. This is going to be the front of the curtain panel, and I wanted it at 8 inches. So I'm taking my measuring tape and I'm pulling it out to just approximately 8 inches. Again, guys, I am not a perfect crafter. So if the way that you do this, if it's going to bother you that it's not exact, then take more time than what I did. That's what I can tell you. Take your time with this craft. because you want it to look right in the end. Now me, it was 8 inches and I'm good with that. So all I'm going to do with that overhang is I am going to tack down with this fabric glue in my glue gun, and I'm going to just press it down, and I'm doing it on that hemmed seam. Now you can see here I used too much glue. You don't want to do that. Where my curtains are going to be, no one is ever going to see them from the behind, and I'm okay with that, but take your time with this glue and try not to overuse it. The next thing I'm doing is coming down about 1.5 inches, and that's going to give me my rod pocket for these curtains. And again, I'm coming back using just a little bit of this fabric glue from Surebonder, and I'm going along the seam so that I don't have any oozing of that. I'm just using a tiny bit, and I'm utilizing this seam to my advantage. The reason I'm doing that is because that seam is actually sewn in such a way that it gives a little more, I guess, beef to the fabric itself. So it creates a situation where you're using this fabric glue, however, it is not seeping through as easily as it would be if it were just the one layer of the fabric, if that makes sense. So that's the first side. I'm going to come across to the second side now. That's my right side. I'm coming down over to the left, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to just make sure that I, come down 1.5. I'm going to do my seam, and I'm done. Now, when I come down to the bottom, I want to be sure that I use my fabric strips that we're about to make at about 38 inches at the top of that. So, however you cut the bottom of your panels, you just want to make sure that you have your cut so that you're able to cover the amount of the window that you want to cover. And it's not going to matter if it's a straight cut or not. At least it did not for me, and you'll see here in a moment what I'm talking about. So what I'm doing is I'm figuring out these burlap runners. They are 18 inches wide. My fabric is 20 by 21. So I'm doing my same method there of just doing like a hand press. And then I'm wanting to cut about 3 inches off of this fabric. So the first thing I do is I cut off the miscut part of the fabric so that I have a full pattern at the top. And I'm coming down 3 inches, and I'm going to cut across 3-inch wide pieces of fabric that are going to become part of these curtains for us. Now, when I do this, I want to make sure I cut 4. I need 2 of these for each panel, and it just worked out that the burlap runners from Walmart are 18 inches, and then the fabric was 20, so I'm going to have some overhang. Every time I made a cut, I did cut off any extra so that my pattern would match. So you'll notice that my patterns, they line up perfectly because I've got the dark line or the dark strip of the buffalo check at the top. And every time I made those cuts, I did cut off an extra little strip to make sure that it lined up. Now for me, I wanted to come down 38 inches, and that's exactly what I did from the top. And I'm just putting a dot of hot glue there. Again, this is that fabric glue. It is in white. I could not find it in clear. And what that's done now is that's given me a 38-inch dot from the top of the curtain panel so that I can lay this strip across now at 38 inches on both sides. And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, had I, hindsight's 20/20, guys, right? Had I given it more thought and had more of this fabric, I probably would have done a 6-inch cut of this and literally folded it in half on the back. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. All right, so from that dot at 38 inches, I'm adding some hot glue and I'm laying my strip across. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You want to work quickly when you're working with burlap because the oozing does happen, and it will stick to your surface if you're not careful. Put something down underneath is my recommendation. There were a few times that I had to sort of coax this back off of my craft table. So, okay, so just at 38 inches, and that's how I've decided to lay that out. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to turn over this piece so that we can finish it off in the back. And so I've done that, and you know, again, that's my top, and I've come down. I'm just doing my measurement again just to be sure that I'm where I think I want to be, and I am. I'm at least 40 inches, so I'm really good. But you see the way that this is cut? So I did not cut that in a straight piece. If I had cut a 6-inch piece of fabric, I could have folded that and covered that. No one would ever know. But that's not what happened. This is real life, and this is how I craft. So what I'm going to do is I am going to make a finished edge at the bottom, sort of like a finished seam. I'm using still this Shore Bonder glue for fabric, and I really like it. It's machine washable, but it says not to machine dry. So if you ever pick this up and want to do a project like this, you just want to make sure that you either air dry or dry on that lowest setting in your dryer. I've had very good success with that. So again, we are just making a seam at the bottom of this to sort of finish it off. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure that the burlap itself is adhered really, really well to that piece of fabric that we cut and have added there. And how I'm doing that now is just literally putting down a little bit of hot glue and then using my finger protector to sort of smash the glue into the burlap so that it will adhere to the fabric piece that is underneath. So there you go, guys. Like I said, real-time crafting, real life crafting. This is my messy crafting. But if you want to do this and give this as a gift, go the extra step if you have the extra fabric and finish it off in the back so that it looks nice in the back, just like it will in the front. But this is what it looks like, you know, as it's going down. It's not beautiful from the back at all, but as I said, this is going at the top of the stairs. My house backs up to woods. Unless the deer and the turkey in the back, you know, hillside care about my curtains, I'm not really worried about it so much. So I just snipped off a little bit of that fabric there at the end, and I'm just going to finish off this seam. I do this on both the left and the right hand side. You know, as I mentioned, this Shore Bonder is real deal stuff. I really, really love it. Now, while I go ahead and finish off the back of these curtains down at the bottom, I just wanted to take a moment to say hey to my returning subscribers. Guys, thanks so much for checking in with me, to ask where I've been. I also want to thank you just for sticking around and coming and just checking out another one of my videos. You guys know your support means so much to me. I super appreciate it. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you as a member of the Rowe Country family here on YouTube. Okay, so as I mentioned, I am going to utilize this hemmed part of the burlap to my advantage. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay this piece, this 3-inch strip. Now this is the bottom of that 8-inch overhang from the top of the curtain rod. And I'm just going to line up the fabric with that strip that is sewn on the burlap. So I'm getting my finger protector out again and just using a little bit more of this fabric glue from Shore Bonder, and I'm just going to bring this down. Now I have to gingerly do this in the beginning, but once I get it in place, everything is super easy, super easy to do. It just comes along very quickly. I do not glue this in such a way that the overhang itself ends up being glued to the back part of the curtain panel. I also opted to not glue the fabric at the top. So I'm just doing it at the bottom along this sewn edge of the burlap, and then I'll just bring the overhang over and we'll glue it and finish it off, you know, with just a little bit of hot glue there in the back. So the reason that I opted not to do the top is because I knew that the way that these curtains were going to hang, that I was going to sort of have to have them puckered a little bit, and you'll see that in the end shots of what it is that I'm saying exactly. But I wanted to be able to manipulate the fabric so that it gave a little more, I guess, pizzazz. I don't know really the right word to use, but I felt like if I went ahead and glued it, it would probably seep through to the lower part of the burlap layering. I did not want that to happen, and I didn't feel like the curtain itself or the fabric strip itself would have enough give to be moved and hang the way that I wanted it to hang on my curtain rod. So if you're wondering, like, why didn't you go ahead and glue the top, that's something you can definitely do. I think it's really more of, personal preference at this point as to whether or not you want to do that. Now, this is the rod I'm going to use. I picked it up at Joann's when they were having that massive clearance sale. This was normally a $25 metal rod, and it's in a matte black finish. And guys, I picked it up for like $6 because they were having, it was like 50% off plus another 70% off. I don't know the math exactly. All I know is I couldn't believe that I was able to find this really nice quality curtain rod for the space at such an affordable price. I was really happy to pick it up. So this is what it looks like in its, just the flat state. But as we hang these and we put these in the space, they are going to bunch up more at the top. And so, as I said, that's why I left that part of the fabric unglued, so that I would be able to manipulate that a little bit better while it's on the rod in its space. So that is craft number 1, guys. That is 1 panel. We've made 2 for the space, and we'll see that here in a little bit. So now I'm going to move on to the boxwood wreath that I was able to put together for the space as well. I'm using just some boxwood that I picked up at Walmart. They are 97 cents for the bunch, and I have to say, sometimes Walmart really does beat the Dollar Tree for florals, and in this case, hands down, I was able to make this really super full boxwood wreath for under $5 completely. So 50 cents for the wreath form, $3 for the boxwood itself, and then, I've just some extra fabric that I had. I cut that into 2-inch strips, and really not even that way as well. And so I only needed 3 of those. That's some of the burlap that I had left over from the curtains that we just made. So what I'm going to do is I've cleared out my glue gun, and I'm using now regular hot glue for this. And I'm taking the burlap, and I'm starting with some hot glue to sort of keep it in place. I'm just going to tack that down. Now, once again, I do recommend the finger protectors for sure. Pick those up and use them as much as possible. But I like to start out just with some hot glue on the edge of that burlap to begin with, just to make sure that everything stays in place as I wrap it around. This burlap is not going to be seen at all when this wreath is done. You can 100% skip this part if you want to. Personally, I feel like when I'm going to be gluing down any sort of floral to a wreath, I like to have something else to glue it to besides the metal. And so when I wrap around and I get to the end of one, I have that edge left over, and I'm just going to apply some hot glue there, and I'm going to piggyback off of that with another piece of burlap. So as I said, because I'm not going to see this at all, I'm totally fine with, the size of the strips that I have, the way that these are being glued down. I'm totally good with that. If you want to do a more sparse wreath, and I have actually a video up on my channel, I'll show you the thumbnail to look for. I did a video about a year ago that was also a boxwood wreath that I did for my kitchen windows. It's a little more sparse, and I like both looks, but for this space I wanted a really full wreath. So what I wanted to do was make sure that I got some burlap put down so that I had a good base to really start with this boxwood from Walmart. And as I said, I only needed 3 of the full stems to make this wreath, and I just am floored at how well it turns out. It's just incredible to me sometimes what I'm able to pick up at Walmart versus a Dollar Tree, and the results are just amazing, just amazing. So now that we have that, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a haircut and clean off all of that. I don't need all this extra hanging around. We're just going to trim that up and make that nice and clean. So the first thing I'm going to do is start applying some hot glue to the outer edge of the wreath form, just like this. And I'm going to take each stem and I'm going to glue it down. I'm going to glue down the first one, and I'll show you here. So again, you know, either a spatula or this finger protector, it really does come in handy when doing this type of wreath. Once I get that first one down, I'm going to apply the second one right underneath of it, and I'm going to continue that pattern all the way around until it looks like this. So that's the first step of making this wreath. It's going to be super, super full. The second step is to come in and do the inner ring. So we're going to do it in the same pattern where I go clockwise. If you are, you know, you prefer to go counterclockwise, you can do that too. That's totally fine. But I start in that bottom part and I do the same thing that I did at the top. I put down my first one, apply some hot glue to another stem, come underneath the first one, and go all the way around until we end up with the inner ring covered, just like we have the outer ring covered. I found that when working with this hot glue, this is my Shore Bonder hot glue gun. It is my favorite one ever, but it has 2 settings, hot and low. And I noticed that when I'm on hot, it takes a little bit longer for the glue to set up. So this is going to take you a little bit of time to do. But once you get through it, this is what it looks like. Now we need to fill in. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the rest of these sprigs or floral greenery, and I'm just going to pull them off the stems that they come with at Walmart. And then I'm going to do clumps of 4. I know it's going to be a little difficult to see here, but what I do is I first start towards the outer rim and I'm just covering up the burlap. That's really the goal. So I start at the outer rim, and then I come and I do one on the inner rim, and then I use sort of 2 more in the center of those, and that starts to build up the wreath. And this is where really the burlap base that we put down, that's where that really starts to come in handy, because you can apply the glue directly to the burlap, or you can apply it to the boxwood itself and then put it down onto the burlap. But I feel like sometimes putting it down on the burlap helps it to adhere better. And you can see here that it really is starting to fill in. So you want to take your time with this. I was able to space these out in such a way that I only had to use a total of 3 of these boxwood stems from Walmart. But if you end up wanting them even more compact, you can definitely probably use up to 4 or 5 on a small wreath like this. But I really like how easy it is to get the hot glue put down either onto the sprig itself or just onto that burlap. And I really like how the burlap helps to sort of hold everything together. So that's, you know, a recommendation. But here's what it looks like when we finally get everything filled in. And oh my gosh, I mean, I am just, again, I'm floored. And that's what the back looks like. But as I mentioned, if you're looking for a more sparse look for this video that I did last year on my channel, using some Dollar Tree items again. But this is this year. This is the new one, and I love it so much. So if you remember this little sign that I made with my Cricut, I have that video linked in the description box below. This is also going to be used in that space. I made it specifically for that space. And to hang it, I'm going to use command strips. Now, this is what makes doing these sort of projects renter friendly. I own my home, but But my walls are old. They're plaster. My house was built or born in 1940. And back then, you know, they used plaster on the walls. I really tend to try to not put holes in my walls as it is. So these command strips have been a lifesaver. Not just because they don't damage the wall as much as it is that I'm also a person who changes her mind a lot. So I will live with this in the space and we'll see how it goes. I also use these command strips on this large canvas that I picked up at Hobby Lobby on sale. And, you know, that's another way that I'm going to be hanging that piece. Now, here's a really good close-up of how I hung the curtains and also the boxwood wreath. Guys, this is a 4x4 space at the top of a steep set of stairs. I'm a 4'10" tall woman. I'm scared of heights, and that little compact space is scary to me, so I apologize. But I wanted you to see this is how it ended up looking. The curtains, I'm going to tweak them. They're new, so I'm going to tweak them. But I put that sign right underneath. That wreath is hanging right in the center. And then the piece de resistance, my beautiful little cows. And so I just feel like that sign that's a play on words, this whole vignette just really is great for such a small space. Guys, thanks for tuning in for my Modern Country Farmhouse DIY decor, Dollar Tree and more, small space, renter friendly, cheap and pretty. Please give me a thumbs up if you did like today's video. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and go ahead and watch another video while you're here. I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.